Hi, everyone. Good morning. Once again, welcome to my show. This is episode 17 of Daily Reflections during COVID-19. And I'm so glad you're with me on this journey. It really keeps me focused for my own day and for my own routine. And today I have with me Ana Patel. Hi, Anna. How are you?
Hi, Elsa.
Where are you logging in from?
I'm in New York on the east end of Long Island, and it's like 12:30 at night here. So everyone else in my house is asleep.
Thank you so much for staying awake to join us and share your thoughts. So, Anna, you're the founder of Noisy Women.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about Noisy Women? And I'm one of those noisy women as well.
You certainly are. So Noisy Women is a community supporting the noise, which I see as the positive change that women are making in their communities, in their countries, and the world. And so it's a community of global women from all different parts of the world who come together to both support and amplify and celebrate the good work that women are doing through their art, through their activism, and through their work. So really the focus is on solutions. So it's women who are solving things, not just pointing out the problems, but also really working to change that, be it small change or big change, be it change through music and art, or change through protest, or change through amazing research. And so for me, it's a pure joy because I get to work and read and edit and interact with women who are doing amazing things. And it really came out of a sense of, in the United States after the 2016 election, a lot of women felt very upset by that election and felt that we were hearing more terrible stories about what was going on with women around the world, and yet I have had the honor of an international career in around the world, and so I had met women doing amazing things, and I wanted to create a platform for them to tell their stories in that way, to hear those stories, to know that sometimes even in the most desperate or challenging situations, it's often women who are the ones who are igniting, inspiring, and creating change. And I thought, the world needs to hear more of those stories. I need to hear more of those stories. And so Noisy Women is a way to seek out those stories and provide a platform for some of them.
When I first met you and I heard about Noisy Women, I was very fascinated by the name, and, and subsequently, whenever I've spoken to other people about it, they've said the same as well. Like, they're very curious about the name. But I happened to be part of one of your gatherings in DC. And it was really amazing, the kind of women in the network. And it was centered around food, that particular gathering. And there were food entrepreneurs and food ambassadors and gastro diplomats and so many others, terms I'd never heard before. So do you think women are reinventing the space?
Yes, I do. And that's one of the most fun things about Noisy Women is in each gathering I'm learning. I am not an expert on these topics, but we can play a convening role, and often it's a total surprise. And so with the Noisy Women dinners, what we try to do is have the host or noisy women who are in that community come up with an idea or a theme, but sometimes it just comes together naturally. And that's the way it happened in DC, which is one of the dinners that you joined into, is that our host is a professor who teaches a course on conflict cuisine, on the role that food and cuisine has in diplomacy and around conflict. And DC is a really interesting place to do that. So that was a wonderful meal. And we did have people from all sorts of food security and food banks and food markets. And it was really interesting to watch those people connect and for me to learn something about an area of thinking and doing that I know nothing about. So that's the most exciting part about this, is learning and also seeing, like, getting away from stereotypes, not only of what you think women do in the world or how they act in the world, but stereotypes about countries and cultures. I just worked on a story for Noisy Women about the head kiteboarder from Oman. And so when you think of the Gulf countries or the Middle East, particularly Western women have a very specific vision of what those women look like. And here is this incredible athlete who's a kiteboarding champion. And she competes with a Nike hijab. And I learned so much about her, and she really challenged a lot of my assumptions and stereotypes as well. So again, it's not just even fun. It's really taps into something very joyful to meet these women and have sort of my world exploded. And I hope the people who engage with these stories, hear the interviews, read their reflections, that their minds are kind of blasted open as well.
Talking about stereotypes, this is a great time during COVID-19 to bust some of those.
Yeah.
And, in India, for example, traditional roles within a home are gender specific. And I'm encouraging people to reevaluate where, all the stereotypes that they are accustomed to, and use this time to break some of them, have conversations around it. Would you like to share any thoughts around that?
Well, yes, because we just had to have a big powwow in my family about how the household chores were being divided, because I think many of us spending so much time in our houses, suddenly it's 3 meals a day. It's cooking 3 meals a day, but it's also having to think about how much food you have in the pantry, and do you have enough for 3 meals a day for a week? And it's cleaning perhaps at a different level. It's taking care of animals. It's making decisions about how to live together as well. And so I had to, my son has learned how to cook. He's in charge of certain meals during the week. He's in charge of thinking about what has to be in the shopping list in order to get those meals. He's in charge of thinking through what it means to prepare food so that everybody can sit down and eat at 7:30 at night or 8 o'clock at night, and not at 11 o'clock at night because he didn't get started until 8. And also teaching them to clean some toilets and clean sinks and clean the shower. And so it's been a lot of together time, and some of it has rankled, but it's also been, I think, a very good opportunity to have those conversations. And sometimes I think I just do stuff because it's easier in our regular lives. But now that my husband and son are stuck here with me, they have to take on those jobs as well, and we don't have anybody helping us. And so my husband has become the king of the vacuum cleaner. And my son is, ready to wash his own underwear. And so I actually think I think that I am preparing my son to be a better partner at some point in his life through this experience. So I think it's a great time.
Absolutely. It all starts at home, and parents really should use this opportunity to educate their sons and daughters about gender neutral roles, rather than force them to do traditionally appropriate gender roles.
Agreed.
You're a Rotary Peace Fellow, as am I, and people think of peace as the absence of war or absence of violence only. But all these things, dialogue, conflict resolution at the most basic unit, that is the family, is so important in peace building. Can you share a little bit about not just what you do in your personal life, but in your previous role in Outward Bound?
Yes. Well, I also think that this moment of living through this pandemic is a real moment to think about what peace means in our own life and in our community's life. And I think that my work with Outward Bound And certainly with my experience with Rotary has prepared me for that in a way, and I hope prepared many of the people we worked with, in that you have to be peaceful within yourself first, right? We talk a lot about that in Outward Bound, and this is a moment where we have found that, you know, sitting quietly and meditation and getting joy out of small things, like being able to spend an hour outside, or watching spring come in, watching the buds start to burst on trees. So I feel really strongly about that idea of finding peace within yourself, and then making peace with your families. Like, I used to joke about how much easier it was to facilitate difficult conversations with other people rather than in your own family. But now I find myself using those same tools of active listening, of, you know, taking time, of taking a walk when I'm mad or when I get in heated, of teaching those tools to other people in my family, because we have to live together in this very intense environment. And then I also think it's hard for people to figure out in this moment sort of how to be part of the community. Like, we're being told that you're doing your job by staying inside, but I have found that there are actually ways. And so, for example, in this community, they're asking young people or anybody actually to call older people who may be housebound and by themselves. And so my son and his friends each have a list of like 5 older people in the area who they just call to check on. How you doing? Do you need anything? What are your plans for the day? What are you watching? What are you reading? And I can imagine that if you're all by yourself in this situation, that to get a call like that every day and to know someone's checking up on you would feel pretty good. And so it's finding these small ways to connect with people that might not have occurred to you beforehand. And I think, I think the kids are also getting a lot out of it. So when I think about the work of, you talked about how we think of peace as the absence of war, but I often think of the sort of idea of positive peace, about how do you create community. And I hope the ways in which we are figuring out to create community, even if it's talking to your family more and talking to your friends more, we're all doing that because we're craving connection through Zoom or WhatsApp, or we're all in touch with people we haven't heard from in a long time because we have this weird time to do that. But I hope that some of those pieces of building community will stay with us. And I think that positive peace is about that. How do we build communities that we live in that are healthy and just for all the members of that community? And this is a moment that we have to think about that. What is it that we can rewire and do differently, that we'll learn from this moment to take forward? And I think a lot of people are doing, certainly what you're doing with these daily reflections, a lot of people are thinking about that. What is the world I want to walk back into if we have this sort of extraordinary, very tragic and scary and sad moment? But what is the world we want to walk into when we are told to sort of start our daily lives again? And I think there are a lot of people thinking about that.
So much to think about. Honestly, I'm doing actually a session on positive peace and community building for a Rotary Club online tomorrow. Okay. So I'm going to use some of your tips in my presentation. You live in New York, and New York right now is the hot spot for the COVID-19 virus. It's really sad what's happening there. Our thoughts and prayers to everyone in New York, and our thoughts and prayers with all the doctors, nurses, frontline staff. They're doing such an incredible job, not only in New York, but everywhere, all over the world. Can you share your thoughts about what's going on over there? How are people feeling? What are you feeling? Your family, your son's feeling?
Well, I think it's a very scary moment, and everyone in New York has been touched in some way. If you don't know someone who's had it and recovered, then you probably know someone who has it and hasn't recovered. And most of us are connected to someone who's on the front line, via a healthcare worker or someone who's going through the MTA, which is our subway. You know, we've lost 60 people who worked for the subway. So those are frontline workers who are putting their lives on the line just as much as a healthcare worker, and choosing to make the city run. Literally, that's what makes the city run. And so I think we all spend a lot of time thinking and appreciating and valuing those lives that are lost. You and I spoke earlier about our governor, Cuomo. I think one of the great things about his daily briefing is that he spends some time talking about what's being lost, the lives and histories and the tragedy every day. Because it's one thing to look at the numbers, and it's another thing to be reminded by a leader who shows compassion, that each of those numbers is someone who had a family and a network, and who told great stories and had a wonderful sense of humor or whatever it was. So those are very sobering moments during the day. I'm grateful to live in a state where we have someone who's giving us very clear communication every day, but also not pretending that it's going to get better suddenly, like being very sober and talking about how this is not going to change overnight. And I don't think it is. I mean, New York City, one of the reasons we love it is for its density and for the ability to be within huge amounts of people, all with their own lives, doing amazing things. And it's also what in this moment is the most dangerous thing about the city, is that density. And so I fear, and for the people who don't, have a safe home to be in New York City, for the children that don't have a safe home, for women who potentially don't have a safe home to be in or a home at all. And I think it's, amazing some of the solutions that have come up with, that the city and the state and individuals who've come up with, huge contributions of money, hotels who are giving up rooms to house them, but also healthcare professionals that have come from all across the country to be in New York and the world. And so this is our moment, actually, to be a united world and a united country, to get beyond the things that divide us, and to be fighting for the lives of our fellow citizens of the world, not just the citizens of this country, but the citizens of the world. And I think you're seeing that with nurses and healthcare professionals going from hotspot to hotspot. So Italian nurses and doctors going to Spain, and Chinese nurses and doctors going to Italy, and California, Chicago, and Florida nurses and doctors coming to New York. And so this is again an incredible moment to walk across divides and to think about what really is important in this world. I think New York is always going to be New York. It has kind of a mythical status. You love it and you hate it when you live there. It has moments of both. And it will survive this. But it will be a changed city, just as 9/11 changed New York forever. This will change it as well. And who knows what that change will be. There'll be beautiful things that come out of that change, and there'll be really sad things. So I think it's interesting. I hope, though, that we can move beyond and, as a world, rethink this. Obviously, the World Health Organization needs a lot more money and funding. Obviously, we need to pay nurses and teachers and others more. We need to raise minimum wage. We need to think about who were the essential workers and who's working right now and considered essential, and who's at home, staring at the walls. And it's really interesting if you think about who's considered essential at this moment and who's not, and what those pay differences are in the normal life, non-COVID life. So we have a lot of thinking to do as a city and a country and a world.
That's true. If you're staring at the wall, then definitely, your job cannot be qualified as essential. And if you're out there, you definitely need to be paid double, in my opinion. Nice. There's no question about it. Unfortunately, those are the ones who are not paid often, their true worth. So I do hope that when we go back into the world after COVID-19 ends, and it will end, we will be a much more humane society. What is your hope for that? What kind of world would you like to see?
What kind of world would I like to see? I would like to, well, I'd like to see a lot of gender justice. I'd like to, I'd like for us to value those essential jobs and to reclaim, teaching and nursing and medicine and people who work in grocery stores, and for them to have a living wage. I think that's really important. I think universal health care is something that a lot more people understand how critical it is for everyone to have access to health care. And so I think that's going to really change in this country. I mean, I do think there's going to be, you and I live in a world where we travel a lot. And I think there is, at some level, there needs to be some rethinking about we know now that a lot can be done with that doesn't require getting lots of people on an airplane. And we know that the environmental impact of those, having people fly to one place for a huge conference is pretty huge. And now we're proving through this time that we don't necessarily need to do everything that way. So I think there will be some rethinking about, what we can do now. I hope not too much, because I love to travel and think of myself as the citizen of the world. But I do think that there are moments there I will take a breath and ask myself and the people around me now in a different way, do we need to do it this way? Or is there a way that we could do it that has less of an impact on the earth? Because we have learned how to be together and have cyber conferences and webinars and dialogues like this, and that learning I think we can take forward into the next one to have less human impact on the earth. So gender justice, healthcare for all, a living wage, and much more thoughtful engagement and stewardship of natural resources and of our environment. Those are some things I would really hope that we can learn from this experience and apply forward into our lives.
What's the first thing you're looking forward to once COVID-19 is over and we can resume our normal lives?
Well, I keep joking that I'm going to do an opposite of, I'm not going to come home for like 5 months. I'm going to go dancing and eat out, go to the movies, and sushi, eating in a restaurant and eating sushi, eating food I didn't cook, being with large groups of friends and celebrating life. That would be big dinner parties, full of people I care about, laughing and healthy. That's what I want. I miss my community, physically having my community around me.
It's amazing how much we take things for granted, people for granted, and this time is forcing us to really appreciate that it's the small things like friends and family, the ability to eat a good meal that somebody else cooked is so critical to our well-being, and we just take all these things for granted. So thank you so much, Ana, for chatting with me. I know it's very late. It's time for bed or past bedtime. So good night, Ana.
Good night. Thank you, Elsa. Thank you for this, and have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And for everyone else, please join me tomorrow. I hope you're enjoying my sessions. Tomorrow we have another nice guest, so please do join in. Thank you and have a wonderful day.